Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the meticulous engineering it takes to build two completely different things, physical microchips and viral digital media. Sounds wild, right? But as you'll see, the absolute highest levels of physical manufacturing actually perfectly mirror the modern art of digital storytelling. Let's get right into it. So let's kick things off with a question that, honestly, might sound a little bit crazy at first. What does a $45 billion physical factory actually have in common with a viral YouTube video? On the surface, they couldn't be more different, right? One's made of concrete, steel, and silicon. The other, it's just ideas, syllables, and pixels. Well, the answer is uncompromising precision. Let's look at Section 1, Foundries of the Future. To really wrap our heads around this connection, we first need to look at precision engineering at the absolute peak of modern manufacturing. A semiconductor fabrication plant, or a fab as it's commonly known, is literally where microchips are born. These are incredibly controlled factories where integrated circuits get manufactured using nanoscale photolithography. Now we're talking about manipulating matter at a scale so impossibly small, the entire environment has to be strictly regulated just to allow for nanometer scale alignment. It's mind-blowing stuff. Now, this extreme demand for perfection actually forced a massive industry shift back in the 1990s. We saw a real split. On one side, you had integrated device manufacturers, or IDMs, who owned the fabs and produced their own designs. But on the other side, we saw the fabless model emerge. These companies focused strictly on the design side of things, and they outsourced the actual manufacturing to pure-play foundries that only build the hardware. And the sheer cost of this hardware really brilliantly illustrates why that outsourcing happens today. A single extreme ultraviolet scanner, we're talking about just one machine inside the clean room, that can cost up to $340 million. And to house all of this gear, companies like TSMC are investing up to $45 billion into a single 2-nanometer fab. The financial stakes here literally demand absolute perfection. Now, I want you to contrast that staggering hardware investment with our digital lives. We spend billions of dollars on chip hardware just to process information faster, right? But in the digital landscape, the ultimate currency isn't silicon, it's attention. And right now, you have exactly 8 seconds to capture your viewers' focus before they click away. That is statistically less than the attention span of a goldfish. So surviving that brutal 8-second window brings us to Section 2. Bedrock and deep research. Because to win here, you have to build a digital script writing foundry that's every bit as meticulous as those physical fabs. It needs an unshakable foundation. Think about it like this. In a physical fab, they use deep piles driven straight into the bedrock, and these massive vibration dampers just to prevent microscopic disruptions from, say, a passing truck. Well, in your digital foundry, your bedrock is your research. It's a highly stabilized 4-part foundation. First up, audience understanding. You have to know exactly what they need and want. Second is competitor analysis, spotting trends and gaps. Third, gathering unique content and facts. And finally, validation. That's where you double-check the accuracy of absolutely everything so your whole narrative structure doesn't just collapse. In your script foundry, this right here is your quality assurance phase. You really have to rigorously grade competitor content from basic all the way to exceptional. Ask yourself, are their insights just basic common knowledge, or are they offering a fresh, surprising perspective? Is their opening totally generic, or is it emotional and highly relatable? Is the pacing slow and disorganized, or is it a perfect balance of delivery? By mapping all of this out, you're finding the exact weaknesses in the market that your script can exploit. Okay, with the bedrock securely laid, let's move on to Section 3, clean rooms and perfect hooks. This is the most sensitive environment of our entire factory. This is where we actually construct the hook. I want you to think about this comparison for a second. In physical fabs, the environment eliminates all dust. Why? Because even a single speck will completely ruin a nanoscale microcircuit. Well, in your script, your hook is your microcircuit. You have got to eliminate all complex jargon, all the over-explanation, and any excessive listing of credentials. If you introduce even a speck of jargon in those critical first 8 seconds, boom, it instantly destroys your viewer attention. So to engineer that perfect dust-free hook, you have to precisely assemble 4 distinct elements. First, confirm the expectations that were set by the title, just so the viewer knows they aren't being clickbaited. Second, introduce some real curiosity to tease a solution. Third, set the stakes. Tell them exactly why this matters to them. And finally, establish the uniqueness of the information. You've got to keep it simple, clear, and perfectly aligned. All right, once the viewer's attention is locked in, we lay down section 4, the circuitry of storytelling. This is basically the continuous loop of setups and payoffs. Just like routing electrical pathways on a silicone wafer, every single payoff in your script needs a clear setup and a logical progression. It's like the storytelling principle of Chekhov's gun, right? If you show a gun on the wall in Act 1, it absolutely must go off in Act 3. Because if you drop a payoff without a setup, or if you break that logical chain, the viewer just feels confused, unsatisfied, and honestly kind of cheated out of their dopamine hit. And to keep the viewer's electricity flowing across these narrative circuits, we rely on a technique called the open loop. Now, an open loop basically creates a psychological gap by leaving a question unresolved. It spikes engagement tremendously, simply because the audience is biologically compelled to stick around and find that missing answer. It's literally the exact same trick that streaming services use to make you binge watch just one more episode. You can construct these advanced narrative circuits using a 4-step framework. You start with a curiosity question. Then you build tension by sort of hinting at the answer. But critically here, you use a strategic delay. You make them wait. And finally, you deliver the grand payoff later in the explainer. When you engineer this correctly, it absolutely locks in viewer retention. Now let's see how all this builds toward the future in Section 5. Automation and AI, because we are truly entering the era of lights-out fabs. The ultimate goal for any factory of precision is, of course, automation. In the hardware world, semiconductor fabs are constantly pushing for fully automated, lights-out operations. The goal is to maximize yield without any human interference. They're also looking at scaling up to these massive 450mm wafers just to spread the extreme production costs over a much larger number of chips at once. And, similarly, the digital foundry of scriptwriting is currently being totally revolutionized by automation. As AI tools for script writing really mature into 2026, they're providing a massive, massive efficiency advantage. Our sources highlight that these AI systems don't just help you out, they completely change the speed from an idea to actual publication. It's perfectly captured by this one insight from the research. You stop staring at a blank page. You start iterating. The heavy lifting of that initial layout is entirely automated, which leaves you to just perfect the circuitry. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to take away from our explainer today. In a world that demands absolute, extreme precision just to capture 8 seconds of human attention, are you still leaving your content to chance? Or are you ready to start engineering it like a $45 billion foundry? Thanks so much for exploring this with me, and I will catch you next time.